this topic in particular is pretty interesting to me because I feel like it's something I generally struggle a lot with in solo queue. I always feel like if I'm playing a scaling lane where I don't have prio, and then my opponent drops out of vision, all I can do is ping and shove the wave, and that's the correct play every single time. But then my team will end up solo losing the game. So I'll try to counteract that sometimes, but like, whatever, I'll drop my wave and come roam, but then the play doesn't work out. And you guys all know the story where no matter what you do, you just get scrubbed. Either your opponent roams and they get super fed, or they stay in lane and all your roams don't work. So I'd love to hear I'd love to hear his ideas on what he's come up with about handling enemy roams.
Have you ever killed the enemy laner? Feel like the lane is unlosable, and then 30 seconds later, they roam bot, pick up a double kill, and suddenly you're the one behind? Yeah. That's not bot cap, that's your mistake. I'm Tim, also known as Mysterious.
How do you know, man? Maybe I got 2 plates mid and shoved in a cannon wave. Maybe I'm not boosted, you're boosted. It's not me.
Challenger player and coach for over 5 years. And in this video, I'll show you the 3 exact steps to shut down any roam and turn it into a winning play for yourself. We're going to cover how to recognize a roam before it happens, how to block out a roam, and how to punish the enemies so hard they'll regret leaving lane. So the first thing you always need to do is you need to try to put yourself in the shoes of the enemy laner. Okay. And by doing so, you will recognize if they have a roaming opportunity or not. It's impossible, it's not practical for you to block or counter a roam if there's no roaming opportunity to begin with. So in this specific situation, if we look at it from Silas.
So real quick, just to kind of try to guess where he's going with this, I would assume that how you're supposed to look for your opponent's roam is you have to see is, first of all, can they get prio on me in the roam? And then also you need to look at your own side lanes and see, all right, what plays are available on the map? I would just assume that this is where he's going with this.
Perspective, we see that he doesn't really have an opportunity on the top because Mordekaiser is under his turret farming, and he's of course
it is a good idea though. It sounds really simple, but it's like, yeah, obviously if you're up against a champion that wants to get kills by roaming, you just look at which lanes they can roam to. Like, duh.
Bit of a tanky champion.
I should just think of these things on my own,
But on the bot side of the map, our bot lane is quite far up. It's quite a volatile bot lane as well in regards to the likes that we have Nautilus, which is an engage-oriented champion. So from Silas's perspective, he does have the opportunity to potentially roam into bot side.
Sorry, I am going to let him talk. It looks like it should be a volatile lane. Rakan lanes should not generally be volatile. He is not a very strong laner, especially when you have something like Nautilus and Jhin as a pairing in the lane, or both exceptionally good in the lane. Rakan should be trying not to interact and then scale into, a very good engaged champion at level 6 at his first item and things like this. So it's not supposed to be volatile, first of all.
There's also limited vision around mid. So limited vision around mid is also a really big sign that there's a potential roaming opportunity. Because if we see him run over 5 wards, then of course it's a lot easier for a bot lane to respect and he might be wasting his time. So step number 1 is putting yourself in the shoes of the enemy laner. So now that we recognize that there's a roaming opportunity for this Silas, let's just play out the clip, see what happens, and I'm going to narrate over it.
Now that I see his lane partner as well, so you're also playing Vayne in the Jhin Nautilus. So unless your bot lane, the allied Victor's bot lane, is really overforcing, the enemy bot lane should be under their tower, trying to interact as little as possible, going down CS, but not actually taking trades. It's so hard for you to actually trade into these lanes. I mean, you'll probably win all-ins if they mess up, but Nautilus can just cancel your CC, and anytime you get a hook, Jin's going to short trade on you, and it should be really OP. So I don't think that bot lane should actually be volatile, because not both parties want to fight.
In this specific situation, Silas kills the wave state, and because he kills the wave state, we need to respond to these minions. This gives Silas a little bit of time, where he can now potentially look for a roam. And as you can see, if you look at it from Silas' perspective, bot lane is looking pretty juicy because they are, of course, stepped up deep in the lane.
That's the part that makes it the juiciest, right? Is they're forward, so he has the opportunity to potentially get behind them.
In the meantime, we don't really know where Silas is, and he now commits to roam on bot, which leads
with vibe, by the way, coming from your blue side. Tough.
To them getting a kill onto the Jhin. Jhin gets tilted. Of course, he thinks like, what the hell is this 4 people here? I did not expect that. And now Silas comes back to mid and he catches the entire wave. So Silas didn't lose anything. This was like the perfect roam for him.
Yeah, now, it was very good.
We're going to need to understand in this sequence how to block the enemy roam. So in the
I wonder if Victor shoves the wave with ult there. I feel like if you're a good player, what you do is push this wave out with ult. Victor cannot shove it without second E or without at least some ability power, right? So he can kill the wave in 2 E's. But so maybe he just ults the wave much sooner.
Sylas comes back to mid,
so that way
the entire
something
wave.
crashes, right?
So Sylas didn't lose anything. This was like the perfect roam for him. Now, we're going to need to understand in this sequence how to block the enemy roam. So in the next sequence, we're going to talk about how do we counter it and how do we actually prevent him, make him lose a lot when he actually goes for the roam.
Okay, so from his language, I was going to assume that he meant how are we going to stop Sylas's roam in its entirety, but he is mostly talking about how you're going to make him lose things if he does go for the roam. He's not actually talking about preventing him, at least not like in any physical sense of like getting in his way or blocking his path or anything like that about getting roams. That doesn't sound like where he's about to go with this.
But first, how do we block the roam? How do we prevent it from happening? There's 2 ways that you can do that. You can do in-lane blocking through your own posturing and your own actions, or you can communicate with your team, which is going to allow you to tell them to respect, and that way they can prevent getting engaged upon by your lane opponent.
So the difference is here. So communicating with your team actually can stop the roam. Maybe not necessarily in this scenario because the Vi came as well. So maybe there's a situation where they just set up a dive. But in the case of shoving out your lane or making him miss minions and waves in whatever way you choose to do that, you're not technically preventing the roam. What you're doing is you're adding a cost to the roam. So it makes it way more... makes it way worse for the Sylas should he not get anything off the roam. And then even if he does get things off the roam, you're trading it. What I've noticed that this does is in a lot of solo queue environments is, first of all, you can't guarantee that he's not going to get anything off of it. If he goes to the roam and they get 2 kills, even as a team, and he doesn't get them personally, not only are they going to be up pretty much whatever amount you manage to get in the mid lane, maybe you'll keep the XP lead because kills shared amongst people aren't going to give you that much XP, but you're going to lose the gold lead overall. What's going to also happen is your bot lane's going to really tilt. They get really tilted when you don't follow roams, and in my experience, this is true all the way up to Emerald, which, by the way, if you're in Emerald, that's like top 10% of the player base. So I'm not trying to brag about that. So what I'm trying to say is that means it's true that letting your opponent roam, even if you're making the correct play, is going to tilt your teammates, and that's true for a good 90% of the player base, I would say.
Let's start with in-lane blocking, okay? In-lane blocking is done through a couple of things. One of these things is by playing Walking War. So in this specific situation, we see that Sylas bombed the wave, he nuked it in by using all of his spells. And that means that he's now a very low-threat champion. What we're going to need to do about this is we cannot let him get away for free like this. We cannot just let him use all spells, get away from him for free. We need to chase him down. We got our Q up. We use it right now. But we got our Q up. What we should do the moment he uses all of his spells, click forward. That's going to do a few things. That's going to, of course, make him lower. And if Sylas is lower, it's going to be harder for him to look for a fight because he's under more threat. HP is a bit of a resource like that, especially on a melee champion, on a roamers. They usually struggle if they're lower because they want to go in. Most of these roamers have dashes, so HP is really valuable on them. And
this is actually a really good point. I like what he's saying to do here. This is pretty smart. So Victor's lane state is very good right now. Not only does he have TP, but he's full HP into this roughly half HP Sylas. I don't know what Sylas' CDs are or what his summoner spells are, but what I do know is that he's right. If you walk on Sylas and take a trade, even if it's not a very good trade for you, if you get his HP much lower than what it is right now, even like just below 50 or something, which you can do with pretty much autos, maybe one ability, then that's going to really dissuade him from doing the roam. Because that means he's going to go bot lane, and if, Rakan's not ready with CC, or he eats like a Nautilus hook or something like this, he's just going to die instantly and look like a complete Inter, which makes the roam way riskier and less likely to work out, which means he has to be more wary of the cost of getting rid of things. The opportunity cost, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase that, but essentially the opportunity is less likely to work out when the guaranteed value of what he's missing still exists.
And another thing that it's going to do, it's going to allow us to walk up deep in the lane, and it's going to put a visual on where Sylas is actually going. If he's moving into topside, we can then look at it from Silas' perspective, top roam's not looking that juicy, so we don't really need to communicate. But if we see him move into bot side, we can then look at bot and we then try to put ourselves in Silas' perspective and we see, hey, bot lane's looking pretty juicy. These guys are up very deep. And that means that they might be vulnerable to a gank. And this will then allow us to communicate. More on communication in a second here. Another thing that I'd like to explain is that if Silas roams, right? If he roams, we want to make him lose as much resources as possible.
Right.
And the way that we do that in this case is by holding the minion wave. If you let the minion wave crash, his roam is free. If you hold it, you can potentially threaten a freeze. That's a way of countering the roam. And we can do everything all at once. We can chase him down, hold the minion wave, and we can also see where he then goes. And we basically can prevent him from roaming just by doing that already.
Yeah, so it's exactly what I said. I didn't even mention it before too, but it's also a good point that if you're already going to have a good idea that he's going bot if he drops out of vision, but if he sees you on the wave and he knows you that you have vision of them going bot, then he also knows that the roam's way less likely to work out and is more likely to be dissuaded from doing it. So you're just like, so even though that actually doesn't make the roam, I think, factually any better or worse than before, in his value assessment of the roam, he is now going to have to consider that you have vision. Even though I think with the information on screen, there's more than enough to know that a roam bot is coming.
Now let's talk about communication, because this is the key difference maker in a lot of games, and I see this every day in my coaching sessions, that people just mess up with their communication. Communication in League of Legends is widely misunderstood. And that the way that you prevent your team from dying is by communicating properly. If you ping the missing ping in lane, guess what happens? No one's going to see that. Picture yourself in your bot lane's position. You're gapping lane, the enemy bot lane's low, you have an angle to solo kill if you land this one hook as Nautilus, and then suddenly Silas appears on your lane. Because while you're focusing on trying to solo kill the enemy lane opponent, you don't see the missing pings on mid. Because you're focusing on seeing that angle, that hook, that deciding factor to get the kill. So if you really want your side lanes to respect you, what you need to do is ping straight on their portrait right there with danger pings and careful pings, and then they will actually listen. You got to also keep in mind that if they see the pings, they also need to have 2 or 3 seconds of...
Well, they're definitely more likely to listen. I mean, I think he's right. Begrudgingly, like, I think if you're pinging missing, again, in this scenario, let's say he hasn't walked up to for sure see that Silas is walking up. But just in this scenario, you ping that you're missing twice on mid lane, and bot lane knows that they're shoved up, and they can look at the map and see that they're the only place for him to go. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that whatever player at X rank should be able to respect this roam, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to a lot of the time. So the best way for you to make sure that in your games you're going to guarantee that they do the behaviors that you want them to is to make it clear that you're communicating directly to them. Missing ping mid and then, retreat ping on them. I think this is probably something I can work on maybe the most, is using pings to more effectively communicate what I want my team to do in the game. I think it's good advice, to be honest.
Integration time, where they recognize, oh, I'm actually under threat, let's back off. So you need to make it as easy as possible for your team to understand that they're under threat, and then they will be able to back off. We now know how to block a roam, either with our own positioning in the lane, where we contest the enemies and keep the lane isolated, or through communication. Now let's take a look at how we can counter a roam. So if the enemy actually gets a move away from lane, sometimes that will happen, sometimes you can't prevent it. Here's how you counter it. The mindset in a situation like this is, how do we make them lose as much as possible? This can either be farm, resources, experience, plates, but it can also be that you might be able to find a counter roam onto the other side of the map. And it also kind of depends on which champion that you're playing, which is going to allow you to do that. If you're playing a champion like Victor, counter roaming is not really on your menu because you're a really ass roamer. But if you're playing...
Especially on Victor, because your early CS is going to entirely dictate how soon you get your first E upgrade, which is just one of the most important spikes of pretty much any champion in the whole game, is getting that E upgrade on Victor.
A champion like LeBlanc, and your Mordecai is bombing the shit out of top lane, and you can dive them, great. Just sacrifice your bot, dive enemy top and counterplay. That's totally viable. But the mindset is, how do we make them lose as much as possible? And it mostly has to do with wave states. And a lot of people struggle with understanding how you can make the enemies lose as much as possible. So in this specific situation, the way that we do that is by actually holding the wave state. So if Sylas then commits for a roam, what happens is that we have these 3 minions as an extra in our lane. Now we can temporarily tank those and we can drag the minion wave out. So if Sylas commits to a roam, we want to deny him as many minions as possible. So
holding the wave is very difficult in a lot of different situations. Here, it's very easy to hold the wave. First of all, Sylas does not have the best wave clear out of any champion. But also, you're full HP with TP up. So what happens, right, if Sylas does go and get a double kill, and he takes his base, and he walks back into lane, and you've held it, he's going to be a lot stronger than you. And so if you're in a different situation where you don't have TP or you have less HP, that can be really tough to deal with. So what you'd have to do in that situation, where he's going to be too much stronger than you on the next turn of the lane, if you choose to hold this wave, is you're going to have to base in time with his. Which means you're going to have to know how many minions you can actually hold and freeze with. And at which part of the lanes you can actually do that. Which I don't even actually know myself what those look like, because those exact numbers and positions have changed with the way that minions interact with each other. They do a lot more damage to each other now. And so it's harder to keep them in a single position. I wonder if he'll go over that. It's kind of a short video, so I don't think he will.
Question we need to ask ourselves is, this next wave coming in, which is in this case a cannon, can we push this on time before he gets back? Right? Can we deny him all of these minions?
Also, it's worth noting, I don't expect him to cover every single scenario in one video. I get it. A lot of the coaches do pick a really easy scenario to see what's going on in order to best demonstrate the concept. But I'm just saying that, it can be really hard to apply in your own games if you're not, seeing the more difficult scenarios happen.
Yes or no? If the answer to that question is yes, what you should do is you should hard push all of the minions, and then all of the minions, his minions will die to turret. And then we can also get ourselves a plate in return, so we get quite a bit of money. But if the answer to that question is no, because we're maybe playing an early game champ or a champion with not that much wave clear, then we need to completely change the way that we play the wave here. Because if we play the wave like this, we're in a position where he can just catch all of the minions after he comes back from the roam.
Yeah, you can't slow
So the
push.
solution, if you're playing a champion like Victor or a low or wave clear champion, is by dragging these minions out all the way deep, so you can freeze the wave state. And if you freeze the wave deep, what will happen is that these minions will then be in a position where they do not get targeted by your creeps because you drag them away further.
Okay, so the thing is, I just don't know exactly if you can even do that on this wave state. This is a problem with my skill as a player, right? So he's saying that you can freeze with your 1 HP caster and then the 2 other casters, which have already also taken some damage. Obviously, you're going to need to drag the wave significantly farther away from your tower, but where can you drag it that's actually going to keep the wave in a good spot? Especially if his roam does work out and he comes back to lane with tons of items. It's that might look pretty rough. If you have to walk too far up into the lane, you're not going to be able to keep the freeze.
Because he doesn't drag the minions away, all of his minions now target the caster creeps. And that's a big deal, because these caster creeps are the ones that deal the most amount of damage over melee creeps. So you want to have these alive. And then what's going to happen if you stack them up a little bit more in the middle, you got these melee creeps tanking the hits from your wave. These caster creeps will deal a lot of damage to your wave as well. And then Sylas will lose the entire wave on this roam.
I get exactly what he's saying here. I wish he... Oh man, I should get a pen tool. But, because he didn't show exactly where he wanted Victor to stand in this scenario. Or maybe he did a second ago when he was showing that you should freeze here. But essentially, you want to, maybe you can see my mouse, towards the river area in this line brush, he wanted to drag them all the way over there. So what would happen is that the melee minions, he said it, but I'll just go over it again. It's so that the melee minions crash on your wave first, and then these 2 casters will just join the back rank of this wave. So that way you sort of buff up the enemy's wave, and it's not going to push towards your opponent anymore. It actually turns it from a slow push to you instead of to them.
because the enemy wave is bigger and it will kill your wave entirely. And then he's trading that 1 kill for a full wave state on mid. And that's a pretty big deal because that's a lot of experience that we're talking about. Now, that's the mindset.
That's a pretty clever and unique way of actually making him lose his cannon minion. I'm going to have to remember to try that trick. That's a pretty good one. Because normally, like I said, I would just... He hits 6 on a few of these minions. I would just like hit 6 fast, ult this wave, and get it into the enemy tower. And he'd still lose that wave, but the wave would end up in neutral. You can actually save a lot of minions for yourself and get probably a better recall off in the next minute or two based on what happens if you do what he's saying here. I think it's a really good idea.
You gotta have drag these minions down, and if you combine this with playing Walking Ward, like I mentioned, right? Walking Ward allows you to see what he's actually doing. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And that's why it's so important to put yourself deep into the lane. Don't be shy of gathering information. In the League is an information gathering game. But like I said, if you're playing a different type of champion, you can potentially counter the roam, cross map, and you will also be incredibly successful. So now you know exactly.
It's low-key a game-winning play. If you prevent the roam, which I don't think the Sylas will roam, if you walk on him, trade, and he sees you, see him walk into the line brush to go bot, I think he's not roaming. I think his wave is completely screwed. It is practically frozen on you if you can walk into that position that he was showing before. It's a little bit more difficult if Sylas is still in the lane. I'm not 100% certain that perfect scenario is what would happen. But if you do get that, right, where you get those 2 minions in the back rank, plus your wave is in this position, plus he didn't get his roam off, and he was already partially down HP, and you still have your teleport, like, GG, man. GG.
What to do when the enemy laner gets their roam off. But how did they even get into the position to roam in the first place? Well, you probably lost lane control. So, if you want to know more on that, check out this video right here.
That's kind of true, kind of not true. I mean, they can force roam timers even in losing wave states. But it's true that, like, if you're Victor, in most lanes, to be honest, but especially in the Sylas, you should have control of the situation. But the Victor does, as he pointed out in this video, have control of the situation. Like, he can make it really, really bad for Sylas to roam here. Like, in my opinion, pretty much game-winning for Sylas to roam. So, I think, I don't think it's bad that at least Victor here ended up in this scenario. I didn't know if he said that this was him or not, but I thought this was pretty good. Hey guys, it's Flynn. If you enjoyed that react or you found it interesting, you might also like this react to Azap's Ability Haste video. Or if you want to continue the conversation, you can go ahead and leave a comment or subscribe and try to catch me live on stream. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.